In this video, we're going to talk about the second of our two loop types, the conditional loop, which for Matlab is the while loop. So why do we need to know how to use while loops? We've already seen the for loop, which seems pretty straightforward to use. Well, consider the following situation. So someone has been stealing your cookies. Oh no. So you need to figure out who is stealing your cookies. So you're going to write a Matlab script that's going to act as a security system. So it's going to take a measurement from a motion sensor every 10 seconds and take a picture if the motion sensor detects that someone is near your cookie jar and likely trying to steal your cookies. So could you write this program using a for loop? The answer is no, because you don't know when somebody's going to try to steal your cookies, right? You could technically set it up so that it'll run every 10 seconds, which isn't all that difficult to do with a for loop, but you don't know when you're going to have to stop and take that picture. And actually, really, you'd probably want this thing to repeat indefinitely so that you can continuously monitor your cookies, right? For that situation, you couldn't use a for loop because the for loop has to have a definite stopping point. So for that, we need to understand how to use the while loop. So here we can see the basic structure for the while loop, the basic syntax. All right, it looks pretty similar to what we saw for the for loop. We now have a keyword while instead of a keyword for. Okay, so we have while. Again, we have the end, which signifies where the stop of our loop is. We have Matlab statements, which occur between our initial while statement and the end statement, which are the statements that are going to be repeated. And we have now a conditional statement instead of, like we saw with the for loop, the set of values over which your loop control variable is going to take. So how the while loop works is as long as that conditional statement evaluates to be true, the Matlab statements are going to be executed and the while loop is going to repeat. Okay. If that expression is initially false, so for some reason you messed up your control variable values, or maybe you actually wanted it to happen this way, right, you could actually skip over the loop entirely by that condition evaluating it to false initially. And if at some point while your loop is running, that value or a value for a variable causes that conditional statement to become false, then your loop will terminate and you will continue on with the rest of your Matlab script. So again, let's take a look at an example of a while loop with at least a little bit of it filled in. So here we have while a is greater than or equal to 0. So our conditional expression now is a greater than or equal to 0, and we have our Matlab statements. So if you're going to actually deal with this little snippet of code, A would have to have been defined at some point in your program prior to reaching this point where your while loop exists. Otherwise, your program won't be able to run because it won't know what the value of A is. Okay, so you have to set a value for A somewhere before you get to this loop. If A is a negative value, then the loop's not going to execute at all because that condition, A greater than or equal to 0, would not be true. If A is positive, the loop will continue to execute as long as it stays positive. So what that also means is that you have to have a line somewhere within your while loop that changes the value of A. What happens if you forget to put that statement in there? So A has a positive value, you enter your loop, but then you don't have a statement anywhere in your loop that changes the value of A. Will your loop ever exit? The answer is no. In that case, we actually end up with what is called an infinite loop. Okay, so an infinite loop is the case where you enter a loop of some kind, but then you're never able to exit it because you never actually change the value of your loop control variable. Okay, so hopefully you'll never end up with that, but if you do, basically you have two options. One would be to try and shut down your computer or to force quit out of Matlab. The other is to use the Control-C command, which will actually force Matlab to stop executing whatever script is currently being run. All right, so let's take a look at a more complicated example here where we actually have some code associated with the while loop. So you can see over here on the left, we have a variable called sum. Its initial value is set to 50. Then we have a while loop. The condition for our while loop is while the sum is less than 100, we're going to repeat. And the Matlab command that we're going to repeat is sum equals sum plus 8. Okay, so we're going to add 8 to the value of sum every time we iterate through this loop. And then we're going to display the value of sum at the end. Okay, so let's see how this works. So initially, our value of sum is 50. Are we going to enter this? In this case, we're at the very beginning. Are we going to enter this loop? The answer is yes, because 50 is less than 100. So we go through and we add 8 to our value of 50 for our sum. Our new value of sum is 58. All right, so we've gone through the first iteration, we reached the end. We go back up to our while statement there and we check our condition. So is 58 less than 100? Yes, so we continue through again. So we again add 8 to our value, we get 66. Is 66 less than 100? Yes. So we repeat, add 8 more. Is 74 less than 100? Yes. We repeat. We add 8, we get 82. We repeat for that one because 82 is less than 100. We get to 90. 90 is less than 100, so we repeat. We get to 98. 98 is still less than 100, so we repeat one more time. We add 8 to that value of sum, so we end up with 106. Now when we go back up and we check our while condition, that condition no longer holds. 106 is not less than 100, so we do not loop. We would exit the loop and we would display the value of sum. So in this case, the final value for sum that would be displayed is 106, and the number of times we went through this loop, you can actually count them up here, is 7. So one of the things that tends to trip people up when they're first starting to use the while loop is this idea that the while condition would stop the loop as soon as that condition becomes false. Unfortunately, that's not quite the way that Matlab works, or really any programming language works. All right, so if when the condition is checked, which is at the very beginning of the loop, the condition evaluates the true, the loop is going to go through its complete set of code, executing from the first line after the while statement until it gets to the end statement, even if at some point inside the computations, inside the while loop, a variable is changed such that the condition will become false. It's going to have to execute its entire set of commands. Once it reaches that end statement, then it can go back to the beginning and it can reevaluate that condition and determine whether or not it should go through the loop again or continue on with the rest of the statements. So to illustrate this idea, let's take a look at the following statement.